An independent judiciary is a cornerstone of democracy, tasked with delivering justice fairly, impartially, and visibly. In Nigeria, there are growing concerns over perceived bias towards the elite and public office holders in the dispensation of justice. This has raised questions about whether the court remains the last refuge for ordinary citizens seeking justice. Upholding impartiality is essential not only for protecting individual rights, but also for maintaining public trust and strengthening the rule of law nationwide. Well, joining us now is lawyer and public affairs analyst Emmanuel Ikpebe. He will explore what it will take to ensure a truly independent judiciary, examine the challenges facing courts in delivering unbiased justice, and discuss the reforms needed to safeguard ordinary citizens while holding those in power accountable. Welcome to Newsday. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
So is it possible really for the Nigerian judiciary at this point to rebuild public confidence in its independence amidst growing concerns that court judgments are increasingly favoring the political and economic elite?
Well, thank you very much. As we both know, that the confidence in the judiciary has been completely eroded, starting from 1999 when this political dispensation started up to this point. And the reason why it has happened is because we've seen politicians get judgments in courts that the ordinary man would think ordinarily that they shouldn't have been judgment in those issues. But I'm not going to put it solely at the feet of the judges, because the judge is actually an unbiased umpire. It is what the lawyer puts, the arguments they put in front of him, that he looks at the superior argument and then gives judgment whichever way it's going. He's not, what we say in law, he's not going to descend into the arena and then come and tell the lawyers what to do. He does everything based on the preponderance of evidence and the facts that are before him and how it is backed by the law. Now, having said that, you want to look at the independence of the judiciary and want to say, how exactly would the judiciary be independent? And the only way the independence of the judiciary can't be guaranteed if it stops being an appendage of the executive. Now, why did I say that the judiciary is an appendage of the executive? Is because if you look at appointment of judges, federal judges, you will find out that the appointments are done based on a recommendation by the Federal Judicial Service Commission to the NJC, and then the appointments after screening from the Senate are done by the president. Now, the president is going to be the person who appoints the judges. If he appoints the judge, how do you think the judge is going to react when issues affecting the executive comes before them? There's a popular saying that he who pays the piper will always dictate the tune. So it is going to be a problem as long as the judiciary, the appointments of judges, is put at the foot of the executive. We sat down in this country here where a sitting president used an ex parte order from a court, the Code of Conduct Tribunal, that was not even listed as a court of first instance in the Constitution, to remove a sitting Chief Justice of Nigeria. And there was a lot of hue and cry, and at the end of the day, at the Court of Appeal, it was overturned that the removal was illegal and the rest of that. So for the judiciary to be truly independent, it has to be independent in the true sense of the word. It has to take care of its funding, it has to take care of its appointment process, and then it has to find a mechanism for discipline, which is supposed to have within itself.
And from your perspective, if I were to ask you, what are some steps, maybe top 3 steps that would be most effective, that are non-legislative steps that the judiciary could take today to immediately try to restore the trust and commitment to justice for all citizens?
All right, now you see every citizen of Nigeria is equal before the law. You can approach the court, get judgments the way it's supposed to be gotten, but not when, quote and unquote, these judges are compromised. I mean, we sat here in Abuja and in Nigeria, everybody saw it, that the sitting minister of the Federal Capital Territory revoked land from a conglomerate and then gave the land to judges, allocated the land to judges for houses to be built for those judges. And then the professor of law, Professor Chidi Odinkalu, now wrote and complained that those land that you revoked from the conglomerate and you now gave for the building of house for judges, those conglomerates are actually potential litigants before those judges. And the land is being used to build a house for the judges. So how are they going to get justice if they go before the judges? it's not going to be possible. There's already an element of bias. So like I said already, if the judiciary has to be free, then there has to be an internal mechanism where it is not going to be, on paper it looks free, but in practice it is an appendage of the executive. So practically it has to extricate itself from the executive, and when that is done, that is the first step of the judiciary being free. Then we look at the mode of appointment of judges. Yes, I don't have a problem with children of elites, children of judges going in there. They are Nigerians. If you're qualified as a lawyer, you have been going through the process of screening and the rest of that, and you want to be a judge, it's open for you, you can be a judge. But how thorough are these processes done? That because you come through the line of a judge, you just go in there. I can name a whole lot of them who never practice law nor walk through the process of the judiciary, and then they just found themselves as judges. How are those judgments going to come from there? So that also ties the judiciary down. And then thirdly, the politicians. It looks as if the way it is sounding, judgment is for sale in Nigeria. So everybody who has a right to ventilate before the court goes before the courts, and when you tell them, they will tell you, no, I don't have money. Like I told you earlier, it is not about what the judge gives. It is about what is put before the judge. It's an unbiased empire. But when it now appears as if the judge has been compromised at every point in time, based on the decisions and things that the judge have been doing, then it is not. It is no longer a free for all. It is no longer free and fair to the average citizen. So the judiciary can become independent if it extricates himself in practice from the clutches of the executive, and of course the appointment of judges. That way, the judiciary can be free.
Now, I'm wondering, how the judiciary can enforce its ruling more effectively, especially when political actors nowadays, it seems, selectively comply with judgments.
We've had this thing before, that gone are the days when judges were very brave in Nigeria and they could issue out judgments, give declarations, not minding whose ox is God. If a ruling is given against, or a judgment is given against a government entity or an individual, no matter how high and mighty he is, that judgment is there. Mind you, the judge, after pronouncing his judgment, cannot do anything about the judgment anymore. The only thing that can be done is only on appeal. But then, once it is against an entity or against a politician, quote and unquote, or any Nigerian, no matter how highly placed, once it does not comply with it, then that forms contempt of court, and that is criminal. It's a quasi-criminal matter. So whoever that judgment was given against can actually go through, and the same judge can now go back and then issue contempt proceedings against that person. The person can go to prison. But like I said earlier, our judges are no longer courageous. So at the end of the day, they are not dropping all of this, and they will not want to give, once a Form 48 or 47 for contempt proceedings come before them, will they even look at them? Those are the questions we're asking. So making the people, there's a mechanism to make people comply with court judgments, but then will the judges actually look at them and make them comply?
Yeah, that's a good point. And in terms of managing expectations, how can CSOs, the media, educational institutions, how can we all play a more active role in advocating for judicial reforms and educating the common man on their rights and the expectations that they can have from the courts?
The expectation you have from the court always is that it will right any wrong that has been done to you. You go before the court of justice, you present your case before them, you're always going to get a remedy. That's why there's this ubi jus, ibi remedium, where there's a wrong, there's always a remedy. It's one of the Latin maxims in law. But then the CSOs, there are several of them, they can actually go back, pick several areas of the law, look at them, and then push for the enforcement and reforms of these areas of the law. We have the Criminal Administration of Criminal Justice Act. We have several other issues that have been pending, and the Law Reform Commission can actually sit back and look at some laws in Nigeria that are actually obsolete. And when we look at those laws, we can always sit back and reform them in line with modern day reality. That way, we will know that now whatever it is that the punishment it is for any law or how the law has to be applied is catching up with the modern day reality. And of course, the media cannot stop advocating for good governance through the judiciary, because the judiciary, as Oputa will say, is, as Josuputa will say, let me paraphrase him, that at some point, if all bridges in the world will collapse, it doesn't mean anything because people can sit back and try as much as they can to find a way to cross over. Same thing with houses. They could use straw and grasses to build. But if the judiciary collapse at every level, then that means it's total chaos. And we don't want that to happen.
Now, very well said. How do delays in the adjudication of cases contribute to perceptions of bias or inefficiency within the judiciary? And how can this be tackled, especially as we look ahead to 2027?
Well, the delays in court, as somebody where the courtroom is my primary constituency, I will tell you the delays in court, it's a two-way, it's a double-edged sword. It could be from the judges and it could also be from the lawyers. The lawyers most times are not ready, and then other times the judges are not even there to do their jobs. So that is why you get a roster delay, and a lot of people will say there's a lot of adjournments coming in. When you go to court, there's an adjournment and the rest of it. But when you go into election matters, which are sui generis, and have a time frame, I know it's always a 180 days. So from the day you go to court, from an election proceeding, you know that you are going to get judgment at this particular point in time. So with the law reforms we're talking about, if every matter is allotted time, that no matter how it is, you have to finish it, just like in criminal matters where you can't take more than 4 adjournment at your instance. I think it has to be the prosecutor or the defendant. You can't take 4 adjournment, more than that under the Administration of Criminal Justice Act. If every case is allotted that, then you will find that people will go to court every time and know that within a year, within 6 months, for 4th hearing or 4 trials, I will be able to get judgment or whatever remedy it is I'm seeking. So it all still boils down to the polity. It still boils down to the people manning and handling the judiciary. Those are the hem of affairs of the judiciary. And of course, they have to do what I said earlier, extricate themselves in practice from the clutches of the executive.
And some say, critics say that the single greatest threat to the survival of Nigerian democracy today concerns heavily the judicial arm. So what, in your opinion, are some urgent pieces of advice that you could give to the Chief Justice of Nigeria and other stakeholders regarding upholding this oath?
But that's on the premise with which I started. The Chief Justice of Nigeria is supposed to head the third arm of government because we are doing separation of powers. There's the executive, there's the legislature, and there's the judiciary. The Chief Justice of Nigeria heads the judicial arm of government. But how independent is the judicial arm of government? That is the question Nigerians have been asking. Every Nigerian, do they have the right to go to court and ventilate? Of course you have the right to go to court and ventilate. But then when you go there to do that, how many times do you get to get justice? Even if it's pro bono you go there for, or even if it's just a complaint you go and lay. Then secondly, when it comes to political cases, how do you go up there and find a way to make sure that whatever it is you're struggling for, the remedy you are looking for, is not something that's been thwarted? So the judicial arm of government led by the Chief Justice of Nigeria has to find a way to put in practice the fact that they have to be free and from the clutches of the executive. And that means appointments of judges, yes, at both level, federal and state level. The governor and the president should not be the one appointing the heads of these agencies. Can't be telling me that the Chief Justice of Nigeria has to be appointed by the president, who the Chief Justice is supposed to watch as the executive. So he who pays the piper automatically is dictating the tune. Then what about the funding for the judiciary? Where is it coming from? How is it being managed? If the budget is being dropped, is the president that will still look at it and say, okay, this is what we are allocating to the judiciary? Why can there be no mechanism for the judiciary to actually self-fund itself? And then at that point, it will know that it's truly free and it won't be a rubber stamp, as Nigerians will say.
Well, I'd like us to talk about the cost of, legal fees. How affordable and how accessible to legal is it, for ordinary Nigerians to get legal representation? And what can be done to make it more affordable and accessible to them?
Well, there's nowhere in the world that legal fees is cheap. There's nowhere. If you follow through in South Africa, Oscar Pistorius became broke when he was being tried for murder of his girlfriend, River Steenkamp. If you date back, O.J. Simpson, it was the same thing when he was being tried and was being for his criminal matter when Johnny Cochran defended him. There's nowhere in the world that legal fees is cheap. Lawyers have to earn their keep. And I mean, they charge hourly and at any point in time that it is they are charging. So it is not as if legal fees are cheap. But then there's always the aspect that the Nigerian Bar Association has put in line that every lawyer has to offer pro bono services. So that part of it will come, pro bono means free. So that part of it will come free for indigent Nigerians who are not able to afford the services of lawyers. And of course, the Nigerian state has put in place the Legal Aid Council, which of course gives you lawyers, because it's constitutional provision that you should have legal representation, and where you cannot have it, the state has a duty to provide one for you. So it is not cheap anywhere to get legal services. But then the common man knows that lawyers are supposed to provide pro bono services at some point, and then there's Legal Aid Council, which can help indigent Nigerians get justice whenever they approach the court of law.
Well, Emmanuel Ikpebe, lawyer and public affairs analyst, it was great to have you on the program this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us.